Welcome to the Coptimizer Podcast, a platform dedicated to uncuffing your true potential in public safety. We're here to provide you with valuable tips and insights that will help you optimize your life and career. I'm retired Chief Patrick Flannelly, and I'm honored to be your guide and coach on this journey. Here, I'll share the latest insights and strategies to help you survive and thrive in the demanding world of public safety. Our noble duty is to protect and serve. We embody the role of peacemakers in our communities. However, this profession's immense physical and mental demands come with a price. If we fail to take a proactive approach for our well-being and lead ourselves first, then the stress from the job can and will lead to poor health outcomes. We have all seen it play out. Not only does this impact our professional and personal lives, but it also affects our ability to fulfill this sacred duty. Like many of you, my journey has been filled with tremendous challenges, with highs and lows. However, through creativity, experience, and a positive attitude, I successfully managed over 30 years in law enforcement, emerging healthy and happy. Now, I am driven to share what I've learned to show you that the path is not all doom and gloom. There is hope and a profound purpose in serving your community, and I'm here to show you that it does not have to come at the cost of your health and well-being. Join us as we explore cutting-edge research, interview top experts, and share inspiring stories of transformation. Whether on duty or off, it's time to optimize your potential and live your best life. Get ready to be inspired, informed, and empowered. This is the Coptimizer Podcast. Greetings all. Welcome back to another episode of the Coptimizer Podcast. This week I have Coach, says it right there, right by his name, Coach Vitou, Jim
Vitou, man.
Vitou.
We got to start over. Vitou.
It's Vitou.
No.
Yes, it is. It's spelled Vitou.
Hit you, Vitou.
All right, Coach Jim Vitou. And you know what? I've done this before. Anyway, I do appreciate you coming and jumping on the show. Just a quick shout out to our mutual friend, Lucas Woody. Lucas is a
Yes.
previous podcast guest. He's like the Energizer Bunny, but his superpower is a connector. But he also told me that's my superpower. So I don't know if you can have superheroes with the same superpowers.
I mean, that's part of his thing, right? He lifts other people up and tells them they're studs and studettes. The reality is, I mean, it takes a village. So Bob is a super connector. Bob connected me to Lucas. Lucas is a super connector. He connects me to Patrick, and we hit it off at the Redbird, right?
The Redbird Cafe. Yes.
That's right. Shout out to the Redbird Cafe. Best biscuits and gravy this side of the Mississippi.
Oh, man. Well, hey, it's great to have you on the podcast. Today, we're going to talk, I don't know if I can say all things finance, but we want to talk about the role of financial wellness, not just in officer wellness, but overall health and why it's so important and your work with first responders. But before we jump into that, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, Jim?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Patrick. I'm originally from Indiana, grew up in South Bend, Indiana, and in the shadow of the Golden Dome, and but grew up on the South Side. So we were kind of like in the lower middle class neighborhood, 800 square foot home, pretty humble beginning. And, was a straight A student. Everything was going according to plan. leave it to beaver kind of existence. I didn't know any better until one day I came home from fourth grade and my mom says, "Get your crap, we're getting out of here." And everything kind of got turned upside down. Moved to a little small town outside of that and went from a straight A student to getting kicked out of school and suspended many times for like fighting. I was just an angry young man and didn't really have a lot of guidance growing up. I was like a latchkey kid, if you know that phrase. Many people do.
Yep.
And got my first job at 15 and just started supporting myself because my mom was broke. So I felt guilty asking her for money. And fortunately, God popped a couple people into my life around that time. And one of them was a golf pro at a municipal golf course in South Bend. Ended up working there for like 3 years. He kind of just kept me off the streets, kept me busy. I worked probably 25, 30 hours a week while going to school. And that just kept me out of trouble and gave me something to do. And he became a mentor of mine and really helped me in a pretty good way. And then parents told me that I was going to be the first one to graduate college from their family. So that was I wouldn't say that was my focus. I was still unfocused and untethered, but it was definitely my goal. And then senior year, they told me they had $0. The plan that they had come up with is for me to stay in South Bend, work at my dad's factory, and go to night school. And you're old enough to remember, Patrick, like it wasn't sexy like it is now with online schooling, and University of Phoenix really did a great marketing job. But back then, if you were working in a factory during the day and going to night school, not at IU, it's the South Bend version of IU, down by the river next to the YMCA, that was not too sexy. So that was like not part of my plan. Because I was like, again, this was an 18-year-old mindset.
Yep.
Wait, the goal to go to college is to not work in my dad's factory. That was my mindset. And then they're like, your plan is to go to school while you work at your dad's factory.
That's like half a Bruce
fried some
Springsteen
circuits
songs.
in my brain. I understand what they're saying now, but they didn't really put any logic behind it. They just told me. And so the other one was to be a guitarist in a heavy metal band, i.e.,
I see the guitar right there.
yeah. And the third was to go into the military and earn money for college that way. So the Army recruiter called me, I don't know, 10 times. And my answer was no or hell no, right? Because I had the Kentucky mud flap, or the Alabama waterfall, right? What the kids nowadays call a mullet.
And you weren't even a wrestler, were you?
No, my hair wasn't cool enough to grow long like I saw in the posters and in the magazines, right? So I was trying my best. I was like Joe Dirt. It only sprouted in the back, not in the front. And so, he called me one more time after that conversation with my parents, right? And that just flicked me in my whole life into a completely different path. Ended up going into artillery a year later, got deployed to the Persian Gulf. We saw combat, and I just went from 18 to 21 in the Army, but I really went from 18 to 30 from like a maturity standpoint. So my best friend went to Purdue, and I grew up in South Bend. I didn't even know Purdue existed. My dad went to IU for a couple of years, Notre Dame, so I didn't even know Purdue was a thing. And but I almost got wiped out in basic training when an artillery shell landed in the middle of a basic training unit that I was supposed to be at. But right, it was a basic training unit, but like I was supposed to be in that group, and I was delayed by one day for circumstances unknown. They're like, nope, you need to stay behind one day. So my unit went off and left me behind, and I went into the next basic training unit. And that unit ahead of us, an live artillery shell, because of a misfire, landed in the middle of a basic training chow line and killed 2 privates, killed a drill sergeant, and another drill sergeant lost his leg.
Holy
so I went to the funeral, and I just kept thinking like that was supposed to be me, right? And then in
Yeah.
combat, there was a hairy situation. And so I was just like, I think I've pushed my luck, right? I'm still here. I don't know why, but I felt like I didn't have a purpose, but I felt like I must have been saved for a reason. So that gave me purpose. I didn't know what that reason was. It wasn't clear to me. Uh, so I had him send an application to Purdue. They said yes. I got out of the military probably 7, 8 months after we got back. 2 years later, met my dream girl there, and I got a psychology degree, and she got a teaching degree. So obviously, she became a teacher, and I found out what you do with a psychology degree is retail management.
I was gonna say you become a cop. There's a lot of cops
That
with psychology degrees.
it's funny because they gave me when you go into the army for 6 years because I had really high test scores, you can be a doctor, lawyer, you can be all you can be, just like the commercial said.
Yep.
And when you go in for 3 years, they cut it down from like 100 choices to four, which was tanker. So I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. My dad was a Korean War vet, right? That's the flag right here, just like yours.
Yeah.
And
That's my
he
that's
used
my
to
dad's.
he used to watch all those old World War II movies and stuff like that. I'm like, I'm pretty sure tanks are the very first thing the bad guys try to blow up. No, no, no. What else you got? Infantry. Well, this was the late 80s. So this was the time of like Full Metal Jacket and Platoon, right? So I was
Right.
like, no, 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 no. What else you got? They were like MP. I was like, MP, that sounds pretty cool. What's that? They're like, that's military police. And at that time, I was like, I think I have a habit of like running from the police. I don't know if I could ever see myself being one, you know? So that was my 18-year-old mental skill set of mapping out my future is artillery. They're like, you shoot 100-pound bullets at the bad guys, you get to use computers. I'm like, I'll take that.
That's wild. So I got to go back, man. I don't. I didn't. I've never heard of anything like that happening. I mean, I've heard of people like having panic attacks on the live grenade range, like when they
Mm-hmm.
first, like, they just freak out when they pull the pin and drop them.
Right.
And, you hear stories about things like that. So what was so just a misfire, like some kind of like
So
a,
there was, yeah. So Fort Sill, Oklahoma is where they train all the artillery. But they have, regular units there as well. And they were out doing their normal, live fire exercises. Of course, every place that has artillery, the Fort Hood and Fort Sill and whatnot, they have just like I'm sure they do in the Air Force, they have a impact zone and they have the buffer zone, which is around the impact zone, just as a buffer that nobody goes inside the impact zone when they do live fire. And then we were doing live, or that unit, because it was our last uh, expedition before you graduate basic training, is to go out into the field and do a live fire exercise. And they have M60s shooting above your head while you're crawling through the mud and all that stuff under barbed wire. And so you have to it's right on the border of the impact zone because you're firing live rounds, right? And somebody just miscalculated, and when they called in the fire mission, they just miscalculated, either put it in the computer wrong or the forward observer. I don't really know because I was just a private at that point in time, and I don't know the behind the scenes, but they were just standing in chow line, and by mistake,
man,
they fired out of the impact zone and right in the middle of the basic training unit.
man, that's terrible. Yeah, I
Yeah, I
mean,
mean, I still have the memorial card in my photo album, the memorial service, and because we had to go, there was, we went to the funeral like on, I don't know, whatever day that was, and then like they might have postponed us going to the field for the same exercise for like a week or something, right? Probably to do an investigation, but I think between a week and 2 weeks later, we were at the same place. And so you talk about keeping your butt down when they were shooting M60s above your head, man. I was like, man, I was the low crawling fool that day, buddy. I was scared poopless. It was unbelievable. So, but it's crazy. I mean, I didn't know what I didn't know, so it impacted me, but I didn't know them. But I just remember thinking like that was supposed to be me, and I didn't really understand why it wasn't, right? But it was my first encounter with like the difference between winning and losing is so small, it's almost too scary to talk about.
Yeah, it really is. And there are moments like that that are you yeah, you certainly learn a little bit about yourself too, or you're forced to look at the world in different ways. It's crazy. I man, we could probably just talk an hour
I'm
just
sure
on
you've had
that, but
experiences like that on the beat, I would imagine, or probably dozens and dozens of experience with your officers as you get into leadership, right?
oh, I mean, you see it all the time. I mean, it's and you interesting. I mean, this doesn't compare at all, but just when you start talking about is something like that, is it quote an accident or is it negligence? Where does the negligence fall? I mean, we I think probably anyone that's been in a profession where you're carrying guns for a living, you hear about the occasional and almost sure to happen, not a matter of if, but when, and hopefully no one gets hurt, but the accidental
Right.
discharge, and so then you set up safety protocols about how to load and unload your weapon. I mean,
I
that's
mean, when
why
you're
you
in
don't
the
get,
field, no matter what, as an officer, as a military, there's a dance between the most amount of urgency you can possibly have and thinking, double checking, checking off the pre-flight safety. Like your brain is only has capacity for so much. Like it's impossible. You know, I remember we were at the National Training Center in the Mojave Desert, and our our lieutenant, which is our um, FDO, fire direction officer, he's I mean, we did most of the grunt work. The FDO gets us from point A to point B, is communicating at higher levels, and really ultimately has charge over that platoon. And I don't know because I was part of the deal, but I think we were doing not live fire exercises, like when we had the laser suits on. So it was like
yeah,
whatever,
the miles gear. Yeah,
simulated battle or whatever.
yeah.
We like stayed up 24 hours and we were doing all these fire missions, and we would live fire into the impact zone, but we all had these vests on so we could get infiltrated, and it was crazy. And we fired out of the impact zone like somebody didn't check the calculations right, and nobody was injured, nothing wrong happened, and I think it was still within the buffer, but my FDO he was Mr. Everything. He used to run marathons. He was like 6'3", this just chiseled stud from West Point with the ring and everything. I mean, he was Mr. Everything. And you've never seen a person turned into from an elite athlete to a chain smoker faster than when we fire out of the impact zone, because that's the FDO's butt. It
Yeah.
was interesting to observe. We never did in combat. Everything was cool, but that one time it was just like it's this human error. You're trying to go fast. With artillery, it's fast, fast. It's a slow, compared to the Air Force, it's like dinosaurs walking around, right, on our speed. But when you shoot an artillery shell, if the other enemy has radar, they can detect where those shells came from. They can triangulate your position, and you'll have artillery shells on your butt before you know it. So there's speed is really important, and when you get into those situations, right, human error happens.
Yeah, and and we really haven't. I mean, I guess in the first Gulf War, a lot of artillery fire, but yeah, I guess I'm just kind of, and again, I'm not an expert in this area, just kind of more of a passive curiosity. But I was reading a lot about this in Ukraine right now about what's been going on in these
Hmm.
artillery battles between Ukraine and Russia, and then the introduction of drones, and they're not only are they using like the countermeasures to return artillery fire, but they're also locating and sending drones in to basically take out the operators of the equipment. It's wild stuff, man.
Well, we did so well because of the Air Force. So I joke around about the Air Force sometimes, right? I mean, that's part of the deal, right? Part of the fraternity. Um, Air Force makes fun of the Navy, da 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 da, right? Around the circle, Marines make fun of everybody. Um, but they found out where the Iraqi radars were on the border. The Air Force took them out early on. So when we were going up to the border every night for like 30 days, firing into Iraq before the ground war started, the ground war started way before the ground war started on the newspapers, right?
Right.
We would unleash every piece of steel on them, and if they shot back, we could triangulate where they were, but they couldn't triangulate where we were. So they were just shooting into. They were a wing and a prayer kind of
Firing
thing. They were
blind,
just
yeah.
hoping, yeah, it's coming from that direction. Shoot that way, kind of thing. So that was super fortunate for us, right?
Or I don't know if fortunate's the word, right? That's what you call smart owning, owning the battle space.
Yeah, well, fortunate for me because I wasn't at those higher levels doing those strategic things. I was just on the dirt.
All right, so yeah, we could chat about this all day. So
Yeah.
I just one of a just a an intersection. We probably crossed paths and didn't even know it, but you got to Purdue in 1992. So
Yep.
at that time, I graduated. So I was in the service from 86 to 90.
Okay.
Had some credits and everything transfer. Um,
Right.
but I did the whole Maymester, summer school, fall, spring, Maymester. I wanted to be done as fast as I could, but I was bartending at the chocolate shop. That was kind of that was my
Nice.
social time, but I worked
Right.
30 to 40 hours a week. I worked a lot. And then,
Social media before social media.
yeah. So yeah, I graduated in 90, in December of 92 from Purdue. So we were there.
Okay.
We probably
Yeah.
crossed paths, and I was part of
Yeah,
the
because I was
fraternity.
21 getting out of the military. So if you ever worked Breakfast Club, we definitely crossed paths. So
Well, we didn't participate back. I don't. Harry's does now, but back
no,
then we didn't
but
do
TA Tom's
Breakfast
did. But
Club.
then as soon as
Yeah.
we got out of there, we stumbled over to Harry's. So not that we needed more, but um,
Yeah. For anyone that doesn't know,
college students
yeah.
think they're professional drinkers. But if you get somebody coming out of the military into college, then they're like, that's PhD level compared to like undergrad.
Yeah. So Breakfast Club, for those that are listening, is a phenomena where, for whatever reason, the bars would open on football game days. The bars would open at 6 in the morning, and people would dress up in costumes. They still do it to this day. They show up
Yeah,
at the bars and go in, start
right.
drinking.
Togas, the Fruit of the Loom guys, the
Yeah.
Grinch, you name it, you'll see it.
I was usually getting off work at 3 in the morning, and yeah, people already, and a lot of people never even went home, right?
Hmm.
They took a little
That
power
was the
nap
big
or
debate. Do you go home and get a power nap, or do you stay up because, right?
yeah.
So,
Well,
so
all
yeah,
right.
I mean, it was a great time. I loved it. It was because of coming out of the military. Purdue was like a vacation for me. Like there was zero difficulty at Purdue, even in my hardest classes. I'm like, I could deal with it for my mental toughness. All my friends were complaining about getting up at 7:30 in the morning and going to two classes, and I was like, I would drink all night, get up run 2 miles and call them weenies as I ran out the door, And so Purdue was nothing but great memories. And I said I met my dream girl there and just have a ton of great memories.
So with the psychology degree and background, your wife becomes a teacher. Now, how did you, what was the path into working in finance, personal finance?
Um, so I got my first internship out of Purdue while my wife was finishing up, or future wife at that time, as a supervisor in a publishing company in Indianapolis. So I was commuting back and forth. From there, I got recruited into retail management and became like one of the youngest executives in the company. Excuse me, in the company within about 5 years. Had it just like everybody said, go to school, get good grades, get a good job. Made great money, had a cool title, blah blah blah. And I was just kind of empty and hollow inside. It was very high stress. It was micromanagement, which I don't respond to. I was driving 30,000 miles a year, and my wife said, you got to change careers because you're either going to have a heart attack by the time you're 40 or we're going to be divorced or both. So it was when mama put her foot down and just, because of the military, I have big shoulders. I can carry a lot. I'm a rock. Nothing can get me down. I can do it. One more thing. But in corporate America, the better you are, the more work that gets put on your shoulders. I don't know
Yeah,
if
that's
you've
not
ever
just in
experienced
corporate
that.
America. Oh, that's the
Yeah,
same. It's yeah, Jim Collins likes to talk about that, right?
that's right.
We
That's right.
tend to
Good to great.
give, yeah.
And so at first, it's an honor. Like, we trust you so much. We want you to fly to Florida and we want you to get a couple underperforming stores together. Really? You're going to give me a free trip to Florida? I mean, when you're young, that's all you hear. I'm
Yeah.
going from Indiana to Florida. All right, sweet. And then you fix their stores, but they don't give you any residual income for fixing the stores down there because that's not part of your region. And then while you're down there, your stores fall apart and your income is based on that, right? But you're really good at that. And you just kind of go, yeah. And they go, well, you did that so well. How about we send you to Chicago for a couple of weeks or whatever, right? So I just kept taking on more and more. And like I said, my particular supervisor was a micromanager, and that is not my thing. I do my job really well. The whole reason I got promoted so quickly in the company is because I had zero supervision. My leadership would disappear for months on end, and I would still get the job done. And then once I got to the higher levels, I don't know if they were just bored or whatever, but I started being micromanaged more the higher I got. And so on March 24th, 2002, I fired my boss and started my own business. But to answer your question, at the height of my stress, there was just a voicemail. Guy said, hey, I heard you're keeping your career options open. If that's true, give me a call. I may have an opportunity for you. I got home and my wife again was like, hey, some dude left a voicemail. You probably should return it. So I did. I came in for an interview, and literally, Patrick, I learned more about personal finance in a 1 hour interview than I learned at 4 years at Purdue. And it just hit me in a way, when what are the phases? I don't know what I don't know. You know, now I know what I don't know. It just a whole nother world opened up where I was like, oh, okay. There's a bunch of knowledge out there that I don't understand, and I think I want to understand it.
Yeah, I don't think it's not like even at like any university, it's just not something that's even taught at the high school level. I mean, I know they have accounting classes and they have personal finance classes, but when you're young, sometimes when these things don't seem to mean anything to you,
Mm-hmm.
there's the incentive isn't there take it seriously or to learn from it. And I think
Right.
sometimes you just have to be in the right place to receive the information. But this is kind of like this is, in terms of today's conversation,
Right.
for cops especially, it's really disheartening because we see it over and over and over again. Um, the missed opportunities to really leverage that knowledge early in your career instead of late in your career. And I know it's not just with first responders and cops, right?
Right.
It's a good part of America right now. Um,
No, I mean, it just, what happened is because of my service in the military, like early on, anytime I see somebody with a service hat on, anytime I see somebody in uniform, period, if that's a police officer, military, I will stop. If they're walking by, I will stop. I will lock up and I will salute them. And it's hilarious because it just puts a smile. I don't care if you do that with an 8-year-old that doesn't even know what that means. It just puts a smile on people's face, right? So I've done that forever. And then I ended up hiring a guy. This is many, many years ago, like 20 years ago. And one of his really good friends happened to be an officer, like a veteran officer, like 30, 32 years, something like that, of the Noblesville Police Department here in Indianapolis, Central Indiana. And and I met him, and he was retiring or getting prepared to retire because he had met his rule of 85 or whatever that rule is for the pension.
yeah.
But he's still fairly young, so he wasn't ready to hang up his work boots yet. But the challenge, the crossroads he was at, is he had, like, I don't know, a lot of debt. Like they had just refinanced their home like 3 or 4 years before, so they had like 25 years left on their mortgage, and had a bunch of toys, the Dixie choppers, the pickup trucks, all of this stuff. So probably had, I'm gonna guess, 300 grand worth of debt, which doesn't sound like a lot in today's dollars, but 20 years ago, you can imagine, right?
Well, it sounds like a
Um,
lot to me
yeah.
in any
And
day.
so he just wasn't ready to, like, he needed to keep working, even though he was going to receive a pension, right? And so we put together this plan and really helped him. And so much so that he got fired up and actually came to work with me part time for a little while. And he was just a guy that everybody loved. And so he called me. He's like, "You need to be doing this for the police department. Like, everybody needs to know this." And I was like, "How do I do that?" He goes, "You call the chief and tell him I sent you." Now, I did serve in the military, but I don't know, like, calling a police chief of a city and it's like, "You don't know me, but Patrick sent me." I I was really intimidated and scared and didn't know. I almost didn't make the phone call, but I'm like, all right, I'm coachable. Try to be. So I call and I said, "Old, I'm not going to say his name, but old Patrick sent me." And he's like, "All right, awesome. What you need?" I was like, "Well, I helped him in a pretty dramatic way on the financial side. And he said, everybody needs to hear this, to call you. So I need some directive because I'm not really sure where to start." And he goes, "How about we start with the FOP? They meet every, whatever it was, month, 2 weeks, whatever that is." He goes, "The president is old John over here." Uh, he goes, "You call him and you tell him the chief sent you." And it was like in a movie or something, right? So I do. He said, "Hey, chief said I need to get some time in front of the officers. I don't know what that looks like. You tell me." He's like, "Well, we're meeting next Wednesday. How about next Wednesday?" Right. So that's really how it started. And I started literally helping police officers, and and I haven't stopped because it's fun. Most of them, I hope nobody gets offended, but like, I describe police officers as like an M&M, like that they get the hard candy shell, but once you break through, they're really, really great people. A lot of them have soft hearts. They're just there to help people and try to make a difference with their lives, but they got to have some Kevlar, you know,
Yep.
on the outside. And when you help a few of them and they know that you're not full of it, right? Because at first they just assume you're trying to sell them something or whatever, you have a hidden agenda. But the reality is, if
We
you
get a lot
don't,
of that. We get a lot
yeah,
of that. People
but
see an opportunity to make a buck and
100%. And I get it. I mean, that's what they have to do. That's part of your job description, right? Everybody is lying to you on a regular basis. So that's going to make you a little bit cynical. But I don't really have a hidden agenda. It's from my heart. And so I'm like, I, it doesn't bother me. I'm like, I get it. Like, what questions do you have? Anyway, so I got a string of getting referred to, like maybe 3, 4, 5 layers deep, to different police officers and making really big impact. And then the sheriff of that town heard about it, I guess through the chief or something. And I got referred in, interviewed with the sheriff, and we did the financial wellness workshop at the sheriff's department. And over the years, I don't, I, I'm terrible at B2B advertising. I don't telemarket. I don't knock on doors. I literally just go where I'm called and referrals happen. So I don't focus on police departments around states. I just have a passion for it. And one of the things you and I talked about that even maybe prompted this podcast is that it's very, if you're unknown and you're a civilian, it's very difficult to get in front of the powers that be to get your foot in the door to talk to officers in a group setting. It's almost got to be by referral.
yeah,
So
got to know
it's not
somebody.
like, yeah, it's not like I'm walking in and knocking on doors or anything. I just go where I'm called. A couple of years, 3 years ago, met a local sheriff at a prayer breakfast. He said, "What do you do?" I wasn't trying to hype it up. I just said, "Hey, I do financial wellness for organizations and companies." And he's like, "Oh, we were just talking about that." He's like, "We need to talk immediately. Um, I'm going to send Sergeant so and so an email. He's in charge of that." And then, it's a long process because it's got to go from here to there to this committee to the captain, et cetera. But once we were in, we were in, and we just try to make an impact. So the purpose of my business is to make money, but the purpose of my life is to help people, Patrick. And so, um, my grandfather was a police officer. I consider them just paramilitary, as far as my respect for what they do. So anything that I can do to release any burden, financially speaking, over any family in our country, especially those who have served our community or our country, it just fills my tank.
Looks like my camera froze. Sorry about that. Hey, I do want to ask, going back to that 1 hour interview, um, you said that you learned um, more in that 1 hour interview than
Yeah,
you did in your time at Purdue. I mean, what uh what was it about that, or what happened in that interview?
it was one particular concept that they taught just to kind of give an overview of what the company did. And it was called the Rule of 72. So it's kind of like, well, it's a really, really simple mathematical formula. It just says you take whatever interest rate you're getting and you divide it into the constant number 72. And that'll tell you the number of years it takes your money to double. So we created a public forum website, a public website that's free to share some of these financial secrets to the public. It's called therealhowmoneyworks.com, therealhowmoneyworks.com. And you can download, there's videos on there with the rule of 72. But bottom line is this, is I just helped a person yesterday, and I won't name names, but they were getting on their savings account 0.01%. Okay.
Yeah.
So in this case, you take the number 72 and you divide it by their interest rate, 0.01, and that'll tell you the number of years it'll help them to double their money. So how long it will take for $1 to become $2 with interest. This is the answer to that question. If you're getting paid 0.01% on one of the largest financial institutions in our country, 7,200 years from now, Patrick, you would come back and your $1 would have become $2.
Well, we're here about longevity and life optimization.
Right.
If I can figure out how to get people to live 7,200 years,
you know how long I could grow a mullet in 7,200 years, man? um,
uh,
so like that's ridiculous, right? That obviously it's just ridiculous. But this is what the crux of it was, is they taught me, like, for example, again, this is not to cheerlead any particular financial event or financial product, but he said, look, there have been mutual funds that have averaged 12% since like the early 1900s, like 1920s, 30s, right? Mutual funds started. And he said, most people are getting paid 1, 2, 3% in their bank. Most wealthy people are getting paid 10, 12% in their investments. Most middle class families don't have wealth advisors. There's why the rich get rich and the poor stay poor. He said, wealthy people are not any smarter than the average middle class person. If you compare IQs, there's a lot of smart welders, smart police officers. I mean, smart nurses, Lord, right? That are living middle class, but they don't make enough money to hire a financial advisor. So wealthy people hire financial advisors. And if I say, hey, Patrick, you give me $1,000 and I'll make you a millionaire, that's a pretty easy calculation, right?
right.
But if you go to the average single mom and say, hey, pay me $1,000 and I'll help you make a millionaire, it's like, I'm going to pay you $1,000 for you to tell me I don't have enough money. Like that doesn't tabulate, right? So he basically, his point was like every single middle class family, every single American could be wealthy and debt free if they just understood the basic principles of how that works. If you're getting paid 3% in the bank, but paying 12% on a credit card, I don't care how hard you work. I don't care how unbelievable your work ethic is. That's mathematically impossible to end up financially independent, right?
Right.
So when I went home from that interview, Patrick, is when I decided I was going to work for the company, because it made sense. It was still a little over my head. I couldn't imagine how I wasn't taught this by my military leaders or my parents or my professors, right? But I went home and my wife and I had just had our first argument about money, right? When we were at Purdue living off penny beers and Grog's Pizza, right? Right? Throwback.
Yeah, that
And
is a
we
throwback.
never argued about money. Once we get into corporate America, we start making decent money. And what do we have? We have bills. We got our first mortgage and we got cars and we have my wife's student loan and we have a credit card. And we're paying on that dadgum credit card every month. And we look at the statement and we put an extra $500 last month on it. And the statement, it went down like $100. And it's like, it's mind boggling. Like, what the heck? So we had our first argument, like maybe 2 weeks before that, about money, but about that stupid credit card. We'd never argued ever. And then I went home from the interview after they taught me the rule of 72 and 12% and all that stuff. And I opened up my Capital One statement, Patrick, and my interest rate, we had good credit back then, but my interest rate was 11.99. It was 12%.
Yeah,
So when
and
they were talking
that
about
was actually
compound
probably pretty
interest,
decent.
yeah, when they're talking about compound interest, that's why, because I wasn't getting paid 12%. I was paying them 12%. It was compounding against me. And that's when I knew what the company was telling me was true. Right. And that's kind of when I was like, oh, and I started, honestly, just from selfish reasons. I did want to get out of corporate America, but I also didn't want to be ripped off anymore financially. And that was the kind of genesis of what brought me into the financial world. And then I sucked at sales. I don't like salespeople. I don't like selling to anybody. So if you're introverted and you don't like sales, but you decide to start a financial services company, I just let you know you're going to have a long, soggy fuse like I did. It took me a couple of years to figure it out. So I kept my day job. It was like the Shawshank Redemption. I was digging when the warden wasn't looking. So I was Andy.
You
Um,
were Tim Ferriss in the 4 Hour Work Week.
that's right. That's right. That's good. That's a good. I read that book early on, and so about a year and a half went by, and that's, I said the country's Independence Day was July 4th, 1776, but my family's Independence Day was March 24th, 2002.
Yeah, that's crazy. And I know it's different in every state. Pensions are different, but they're all designed around the same premise, right? This um, like a little bit more secure 401k, a government
Right.
sponsored 401k is basically what your pension is. Um, and in 2014 in policing, there was the 21st Century Policing Initiative under the Obama administration, and they were looking at, this is um, in the wake of the Ferguson, Missouri incident. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to get into all that. It's kind of
Right.
an interesting time in policing, but it, you know, one of the only good things I think that came out of all that was that uh, drive to really kind of reevaluate policing. What are we doing well? What do we need to improve on? It had been 30 years since there had been any type of study or commission on the study of policing and
Right.
evaluation of our practices, what we're doing well, what we're not doing well. But there were 6 pillars that were identified in this. The sixth pillar was officer safety and wellness. And in that, it's kind of a broad category, but in that category, a lot of agencies included the concept of financial wellness. And I think, generally speaking, police departments over the years have always had individuals inside of the agency that were good with money,
Mm-hmm.
that were just smart with money. And but more people than not smart with money didn't understand the laws of compounding interest and what that 11.99% really means on your credit card statement as
Right.
compared to the 0.01% return that you're getting on your savings. So I think police departments now are taking a more active role in financial literacy and helping people understand how to properly value their money and all the things that surround that. So I mean, for today, I mean if you kind of had to put it in a nutshell, just kind of sum it up, I mean why do you believe financial health is crucial, not just I
Right.
mean, for us, we're talking about for first responders for our audience.
For sure. I mean, just statistically, uh, if 1 out of 2 marriages end in divorce, I think 8 out of 10 cite financial stress is the main factor. So if you think about any employee in corporate America or as an officer, how does a divorce impact performance at work? Right. I
Right.
mean, it's just highly stressful. And we could peel that back forever. Right. And then I think last time I read, like a very high percentage of people that take their own life, males that take their own life, financial stress, the number one factor. So there's big statistics like that. But the reality is there's something that I read about. So everybody knows what absenteeism is, right? You hire
Right.
somebody, Patrick calls in sick and can't get to work, which is problematic for productivity at any level. But there's a new term called presenteeism, which is when Patrick shows up to work, but he's really not at work. So at least if he doesn't show up, there's no production going on, but there's no payroll. If he shows up and he is not being productive and taking payroll, right? So it's called presenteeism. And what HR Magazine said is that $7,000 per year of productivity is lost per year per employee due to presenteeism. The number one distractor when it comes to people not being present, people being distracted at work, is financial stress. It's, somebody having to call Comcast while they're working to make sure their cable doesn't get cut off and that they can get in and maybe cut out of work a few minutes early to get to Comcast before they close so their wife doesn't find out they're behind on their bills, or whatever the case may be, right? And so for-profit companies, I just say, how many employees do you have, Patrick? You're like, well, I have 30. I said, well, HR Magazine says $7,000 a year per employee. I'm like, how much is $7,000 times 30 employees or whatever, right? And I said, let's just say they're full of it. And that, I didn't do that study, so I can't back it up 100%. I said, but let's say that it's pretty true, and let's just cut that in half and say it's $3,500 a year times 30 employees. I'm like, I'm not a miracle worker. I can't guarantee that that's going to go right back to your bottom line. But if financial stress is the number one factor, if I can come in and teach people how to be better stewards of their money, how to take control of that, how to just put it on autopilot so they have to worry less about it, is that something you'd be interested in? And 9 out of 10 people I meet with say absolutely. So I have a 90% close ratio on people that say they want to do financial wellness, but only about 50% of those people will actually implement it, Patrick, because it's logistically difficult to herd the cats and get the people together and figure out how to put them in a room. So, yeah.
Well, getting them in the room is the first step, though.
Yeah. So, like, working with this local agency here, it was very transparent. I've been doing it a long time, so I don't, first of all, I don't like red tape. I don't think anybody does, but there's a lot of it, especially with municipalities potentially. So I'm just a truth teller, man. I'm like, look, here's my experience of 20 years of helping police officers. Most of them are there to serve and to help people and to make a difference with their life. The way that it's set up, because of pensions, there might be one of the last of the Mohicans that has pensions, and all of the different perks. Most of them don't worry about that. It's kind of like with nurses and teachers and police officers and firefighters. They know there's something there for them. So they're focused on service of other people. So they just don't think about it, because it's like, that's going to be handled if I'm here for 25 years and this thing and add this and subtract this, that I'm going to get so much money. And they just assume that's going to be enough. And that's one less thing they have to worry about. But there's some things within that they need to figure out. And then also with police officers, they are attracted to things, because this is not a psychology study. This is through my own experience and through speaking with a lot. The job is really, really stressful. So on the weekends, they have a pop-up camper, or they have a Harley, or they have a bass boat, or they got a big old honking Dixie chopper that they can go mow the back 40 and take some stress off, or whatever. But they buy expensive toys, which is really a lot of debt, right? So they have a mortgage, they got an F-150, they got a Dixie chopper, and they got a bass boat to pull behind. Now, next thing you know, they're like $400,000 in debt. So now they're working to service the debt. They're not even really focusing on retirement and stuff like that. They're just, but because of the security of it, They go, yeah, but I can handle $4,000 in debt and it's no big deal. My wife's a nurse. I'm a police officer. We have almost guaranteed income coming in unless something stupid happens. So they take on a lot, but little by little, it's number one, it's very stressful. Having that much debt, even if you can pay it, like paying all those bills and watching your hard earned money like drip away, it's very stressful. Number two is there's other things being neglected if you're servicing debt with all that money, right?
Right.
And then three, this isn't for the ladies so much, but guys pretend like they have to, it's like written in the handbook, they have to pretend like they know everything about two different subjects. Now, women know we don't know anything about either one, but one is money. I'll let your imagination
And two
wander
is
to what the
women.
other one exactly. So there's also like, I'm not saying this to be true, but I think in most guys in general, maybe some females too, but definitely police officers have to have that Kevlar vest of emotion. And so like, I got this, I know what I'm doing kind of thing. So the odds of them reaching out and asking for help, again, I can't back it up with a stat, but it just seems like it might be less likely because they're the helper. I don't need help. I mean, that's a military thing. That's like when you're trained for battle, like officers, firefighters, police, first responders, military, it's a weakness to ask for help.
Yeah, I do think we're finally getting a little bit better at that. We've got a long way to go, but I think we've turned the corner. And I think some of that is just a generational change. I think
Yeah. Well, I
y-
mean,
uh,
there's,
younger
you could,
professionals, I
because
do.
people like you and people that are forward thinking police chiefs and sheriffs and stuff like that, leaders around the country. I mean, it's got to change, but that's my personal experience. I'm not saying it's 100% true, but so I think if that leader is open to getting better and having their people get better, then that's an easy ask. The number one challenge is when somebody's off their day off or they're getting done with a shift, like hurting them back in because people do wellness. I mean, they do health wellness and this and that and everything. It just seems like another meeting. It's just another meeting. So their sense of urgency to get there or the perceived value
Yeah.
is the challenge. So, what I tell departments is like, this is not a one and done thing. If you want to have a relationship and you want to change the culture and you want to get people more engaged, right? You've probably had an engagement problem for 20 years. I'm really good. I'm not that good. I can't, you know what I'm saying? I can't fix a problem that's been there for 20 years, but I can be the seed. I can be the catalyst and I have no problems. And I know what I'm doing and I'm good at what I do. And I have total empathy for your position and for the officers I'm talking to. And so like, I'm going to do my best, but the reality is we're not going to reach everybody. But if we reach a percentage of them, especially if you bring your leaders in and we do like a pilot program and we can get some folks going like, oh, this guy's not full of crap. This is actually really good information. Oh, wow. And if we get a couple testimonies within the police department, that's almost more important than doing a workshop because those others that will go, yeah, this dude's legit, or this information is really, really helpful, those internal referrals and internal cheerleading will almost do more than somebody from the outside saying you should be at this meeting at 6 o'clock on Thursday. We
Yeah.
can get a few testimonies.
So, I mean, and again, if it's it's easy to say in hindsight, but we had officers, and I'm sure it's probably like this in a lot of agencies. But again, we had officers that were really smart, that understood finance well, they understood
Mm-hmm.
personal finance well, Um, and, oftentimes they would offer to teach and train those things to other police officers.
Yep.
And oddly enough, we would have, I mean, I took part in a few of these conversations where there was just a lot of resistance to have that type of training, where some people weren't interested in it. Like, look, I would rather train on, defensive tactics or firearms or maybe like all the other sexier things in policing.
Hmm.
Who wants to spend time on personal finance? And then, but then there is a practical side of that too, where like an agency like ours, we train more than the average, probably mid-sized police department. I mean, we had 36 hours of built-in training that we did, but you have 7 hours of state mandates. It might even be a little bit more now.
Right.
And then you have these high priority things that you need to train on. And so time evaporates pretty quickly when you're trying to
Right.
balance everything that you need to do and that compared to what you want to do. So you have to prioritize appropriately. And sadly, physical wellness,
Hmm.
emotional wellness, financial wellness, these things tend to get pushed to the side or pushed to the back burner, in a lot of agencies, just because of the way the priorities stack up. And then
Right.
um, but I do think we're kind of seeing things a little bit different now. And I guess, the old Teddy Roosevelt quote, right? The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago.
Hmm.
The next best time is today.
Right.
And, nobody wants to sit around and watch trees grow. But, if you've grown up in a city where people have planted a lot of trees and been thoughtful about the future, then you see the benefit of that now. But finance really works that way, especially when it comes to being smart early. If you're smart early in your career, that has huge dividends for you on the back end. And I say this now, being I'm now retired for 2 years.
Right.
Yeah, and I think I did some things well. I think I did some things really well, and I think I did some things just really poorly. And I wish I could go back and change some of them now, but I can't. So now you just got to manage forward. But that's really the whole nexus and the genesis for having people like you on this podcast, because people might think, well, what does cop optimization, what does personal finance have to do with this?
Right.
And like you said, you know, divorce rates, which thankfully divorce rates in policing, new data is showing that it's not nearly as bad or as high as what people have historically thought. In
Yeah.
fact, actually, police officers might have more stable home environments than a lot of other
Right.
professions, which runs contrary to what we heard 20, 30 years ago. The cops going out and drinking after work and abandoning their
Yeah. I
family.
mean, right. I'm sure those were sometimes, but um, I back to your analogy about planting a tree or planting an acorn. Um, I think there's another quote that's like, we don't plant a tree for our benefit, but for the benefit of the next generation, kind of thing. That's when
Right.
they're going to feel the shade or be able to benefit from the shade. So I think with any company, it's just forward thinking people. Like a lot of folks are in survival mode from a leadership standpoint and whatever. They're just trying to check the boxes and get everything done and keep the dadgum thing moving. So I have a lot of empathy for them. But the ones that are just kind of forward thinking are the ones that typically, because they know, I mean, if you're a leader at any level, you know that money is an issue. Most people, some might have total control of it, but most people don't. So that's why I said like 9 out of 10 people I meet with are like, we need this. But when it comes down to implementation, maybe now is the time, maybe it's not. It doesn't matter. I just want to sow seeds. I just want to let people know there actually is an answer out there. There's an alternative. It's not, I'm not Harry Potter, you know, but if that's something that somebody's open to, sowing some seeds and engaging folks in that way, it's a free service. I don't charge for that service. So I'm not coming in and saying, hey, for the Lafayette PD, my expertise will cost you 10 grand. I do it because it's number one, it's an easy way for me to build up my credibility, right? And I know 9 out of 10 people I meet with, there's a gap. There's just a gap. So I've got services that I can bring in to help people fill those gaps. So it just prevents me from having to knock on doors and market. So I don't, I tell people if I was coming to you when you were the chief of police, I would say, look, I'm assuming 30 years as an officer, as a leader, as a chief, where would you, how in tune is your BS detector, Patrick?
It's pretty in tune.
Right. That's what I would ask. That's what I ask most leaders when I go, and they go, oh, dude, laser focus. I go, okay, so if I pass that, it's like this guy is not full of it. I mean, a little bit full of it, right? But he's telling the truth. I think this is a good thing. And if your people like me, and if I do what I say I'm going to do, if I make an impact, then your way to pay me is referrals. I don't know your world, but I know you guys meet some secret society of police chiefs. I don't know. I just know there's some meeting somewhere that if you cheerlead me, your fee to me is 3 referrals. If you like me and trust me, and I pass your BS detector and I do something good for your department, cheerlead me to 3 other people, make an introduction on LinkedIn, whatever. Okay. Just cheerlead me so I can go in the side door instead of the front door.
Well, yeah, credibility does go a long way, and I think that's a great approach. You know, just to kind of touch again a little bit on when we're talking about optimization and why financial security and financial health is so important, because it does when there is a lot of stress when you do have bills and you're not sure if you can meet those bills. And some of the issues that we have in policing is that it's not just young officers, right? It can be young or old. Uh, People do overextend themselves. Maybe it's getting into too much house, than they can afford, or they have a side gig that they work like once or twice a week, and then they start basing their spending on these
Right.
extra duty assignments and the extra cash that they have coming in, rather than using that money to pay down existing debt or to save. They oftentimes take on additional debt, and then
Mm-hmm.
and then the side gig goes away, and then that adds stress. And so that kind of goes back to your point about presenteeism as well, where how much energy are we actually focusing on our primary jobs and our primary responsibilities. And police departments are doing a much better job of managing. There are companies out there like Extra Duty Solutions and a few others, and I have no sponsorship or affiliation with them, but those were just some companies that we were looking at. I know towards the end of my tenure, where we can start to track, which officers are working where off duty, so we can manage their primary responsibilities
Mm-hmm.
better. But I think for agencies that are using those things, that would also be a good tool to help them evaluate internally maybe the financial health of their officers, just by tracking how much or how little officers are engaging in that. And we are seeing, I think this is more anecdotal. I don't have any hard data to back this statement, but this younger generation tends to protect their off-duty time more than those, like me, that started 30 years ago, where we used to fight over some of those off-duty jobs. Now,
Right.
we have a hard time filling them, overtime assignments and things like that. And whether that's whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, hard to say. I think it's probably on I guess on par, a better thing. than anything else, just because it does show that officers are valuing their time. And then I think, people want the expertise of having professional police officers work in some of
Right.
these collateral duty assignments, and then it also then the pay is appropriate as well.
Right.
It's not just kind of having like free security. All that being said, another area, and I want to get a little bit more specific here in a second, but
Yes, sir.
why this is important is I also look at health as a financial spend, particularly when you get to the point in your career where you're getting ready to retire. Not all police departments have any type of healthcare benefit when they retire. So you spend
Mm,
the young part of your career when you should be the healthiest, with great coverage, and then you
right.
retire when you're your sickest and you're most vulnerable with very little coverage. And I want that to sink in for people if you haven't thought about that. Like, if you are not making deposits on your individual health, the number one cause of bankruptcy in America is health related spends.
Right.
And it's not even close on a second. The number one killer of cops is cardiovascular disease, and
Mm,
the number two is not even close. So it just goes to show you, like, I think when you put things in the right perspective, we can start to paint a picture for young officers about why this is so important. Yeah, it's not just about your physical health, because when you're in poor health, there's going to be a big spend. Municipalities care about this because their number one spend is their healthcare spend.
right.
How much money are they? Well, I mean, I guess depending on what buckets you're looking at, but yeah, I mean, employees not only do their salaries cost a lot, but the healthcare spend on them is really high. And so I taking these comprehensive approaches about why all of these little things do matter and they can add up to big things down the road.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think it's really important. So kind of with that context, if you were um, if I'm a first year police officer and the Vitou group comes in, the
Hmm.
Vitou group, sorry, I don't know why I keep doing that. I
That's
know.
okay. It's a
Um,
test.
but you come in, what are some of the first steps that you think first responders should take to improve their financial health and overall
Yeah.
financial well-being?
So, one of the first things I challenge people to do is like my software does it for them. So, literally, if they take time, even as an individual, forget the financial wellness workshop at a police department. There's an individual out there that the timing is right and they're just like, I got to get my stuff together. I want a second opinion. They can reach out to me. I'll do that at no cost for any first responder, like a plan. But this is one of the things that I'm going to have them do. I um, It was out of desperation that I came up with this. I only have like maybe two original thoughts in 20 years of business. Everything else has been borrowed, Patrick, from other people, right?
We're
Uh,
we're good at that as cops.
right, which is fine, right? So um, I met with a single mother many, many years ago, probably 15, 16, 17 years ago. And she was like, "This is unbelievable, Jim. I need to do all of this. Man, you're really speaking to me, but I don't have any money to do any of this. I'm a single mom. Like, appreciate the information. I'll call you when I have some money to actually do something." Had no life insurance, had no emergency fund, wasn't saving anything for retirement. So the need was there. Her heart was there, but she's like, I don't know how to do it. So I just, out of sheer panic, this was back in the days when you used to get big statements in paper. And for those of you younger officers, paper is this thing made of trees that they used to use. Um, they're all electronic now. But what I tell people, it's called the debit card challenge. I have every family do this that I meet with. Go back 30 days. So go back to I know you can go back to August. Let's say August is over now. And you want to look at your debit card statement and identify wants and needs. Go through an entire month and grab your calculator and all of the wants you add up in your calculator for 1 month. And you got to use the honor system. So if Patrick went to Speedway to get gas and his bill was $78.12, that means he got $70 of gas and he got a Monster and like a Snickers bar and like a 5-hour energy for later. Okay. So just use the honor system and then just add up what the wants are for 1 month.
Hey, hold on. Can you hold that thought for 1 second?
Yeah. That's fine. So just do 1 month of monthly expenses, add up the total of what your wants were, and then do it a second month to get some sort of trend, right? You're just kind of doing like a little private P&L, right? Now, in this lady's case where she said, I have no money, Jim, thank you. I said, okay, do this. Let's meet in 48 hours. If you say, Jim, or if I see there is no money, I'll apologize to you. I'll take you to lunch. You can say, I told you so. I give you permission. I won't take offense. She said, okay. We met 2 days later. She comes in and she said, the first thing I want to tell you is I don't like you very much.
That's funny.
So she found $350 that she was blowing. She goes, I would have put my hand on a stack of Bibles. I didn't have any extra money. I found $350. And, and it was just, we started small. It's not like she was on track to be wealthy, but we, put some protection on her because she had kids she was raising. So if something were to happen to her, her kids would have been screwed. So we put a little cheap term insurance on her for $50 or whatever it was. And then we put most of it into her emergency fund. She wasn't ready to start building for retirement yet because she didn't have an emergency fund. So, there's right, you got to put on your boots before you put on your, flak jacket and so forth and so on, right? There's a protocol to becoming debt free and wealthy. And that was kind of the beginning. So the average family that I've helped do that over the last 17, 18 years, I would say on average is probably $500 to $700 a month. The most was like $2,000 a month of just blowing. So then if let's say your number is $750 between you and your wife, I just say, look, you're not going to go from blowing $750 this month to like blowing zero next month. That's like quitting cold turkey. That's never going to happen. You're going to relapse. Okay. But I say, what amount do you feel comfortable putting aside? So like, and then I go, could you do half? Could you do $375? If I gave you permission next month to blow $375 on whatever the heck you want, would you be okay with that? You go, well, yeah. And your brain goes, oh yeah. And I go, great. Let me take the other 375 and let's do something with it. Let's do a Roth IRA. Let's put an emergency fund. Let's put it towards getting out of debt several years, whatever that is, right? Well, it's prioritized on the plan. And then, but if you tell your brain, I can blow $375, your brain goes, okay, I'm in agreement with that, right? So that's the one thing that I would start with, because you will find money. I said, it's like a treasure hunt, like, because people find money and it's hundreds and hundreds of dollars that's leaking out. That's going to make sure the general manager at Starbucks makes their quarterly bonus is what you're doing. Okay. But last month you spent $100 on Starbucks. Your family's not on track to be free. You have financial stress, but the general manager at your local Starbucks just got their quarterly bonus. So which is more important, your family or the GM at Starbucks? Right. And I'm direct with it, but I say it in I try to make it as lighthearted as possible. And they're like, yeah, my family. I'm like, well, if you were to present evidence in a court would you be able to present enough evidence right now that your family is the priority or your future is the priority? And it's just sometimes you just have to, a coach tells people what they need to hear, not what they want to hear. I'm all about building relationships. I think you and I have hit it off. We've had breakfast a couple times. I wouldn't be here if you didn't feel like I was a good person or had something of value to share. But at the same time, you being a coach and a consultant for right officers and for organizations, and then Lucas being a coach, right? And me, like if a coach just tells you what you want to hear, that's not a coach. Okay. That's a
A cheerleader.
encourager or something, right? Cheerleader. Um, so I just talk to people very directly about their goals. It's not about my ego. Okay. I've already married a really good looking chick. I have a nice home. I have a business that I've been full time for 22 years. I don't need to feed my ego. I'm not that. I'm a faith based guy. I'm here to serve his people. But if you're making poor choices, at the very least, I want you, if we ever see each other in the future, we see each other at the Walmart in Lafayette. I never want you to have the leverage to say, Jim, you knew this information and you didn't share it with me. I thought you were my friend. Now, if I share the information and you're a knucklehead and I try to coach you and you are like, yeah, but I think I know better. Well, I might feel bad if you don't get to your goals and dreams, but I won't feel guilty,
Yeah.
you know?
When I owned our CrossFit gym, I've told this story a few times, but one of the things that people used to tell us a lot is, "Oh, CrossFit, yeah, that looks really hard." And I I like I want to do that, but I think I'm going to get in shape first before I'm going to lose 30 pounds and then I'm going to come do CrossFit. And I'm like, no, no, that's not the way it works. Like,
I
come.
mean, it's kind of logical, but I have people say that, yeah, I'll sit down and map out my finances when I get, because really what it comes down to is they're embarrassed,
Yep. Yeah.
period.
And,
End of
and like,
story, right? I'm embarrassed to have you look at my finances. Okay. But that's the enemy talking. The enemy is a discourager. The enemy doesn't want you to get to your goals and dreams. I'm telling you right now, I've seen some disastrous stuff. You're very likely not even anywhere near as bad financially as you think you are for not addressing it, right? It's just like from a health standpoint, people are embarrassed. Like if you ask me to do a pull up and I can't do one daggone pull up, dude, I'm going to be embarrassed in front of 12 other people doing this class. I ain't doing it. Let me get into shape before I get into shape. And you're like, ugh. So,
so the first
all you
thing,
can do is all you can do.
yeah. And, so the first thing when I'm working with clients, when I'm coaching people really on fitness, nutrition, like making changes in that area.
I didn't even know
Um,
you coach people in nutrition. You sat there and watched me eat biscuits and gravy and hash browns for breakfast and didn't say nothing. You didn't slap the fork out of my hand.
no, I wouldn't do that either. All depends on your goals, right? So, one of the first things I tell people that you have to do, and it's a little bit tedious, but really before you start doing anything else is, and I just have them use the Map My Fitness app. There's other apps out there, I mean, that work or that are also just as good. This is not a pitch for any one app, but
Mm-hmm.
just track what you're eating for a couple weeks. And you have to track everything, not not just generally speaking. Like I had a cheeseburger and French fries for lunch. Like
Wait, what app is it?
it's called Map My Fitness, and it's
Map
just
My Fitness.
yeah
All right.
because it's got a little it's got basically a macro calorie counting tool in there for you. So you just enter
Okay.
things in, and it's kind of a pain for the first couple weeks, but once you get into the groove of doing it, really what it's telling you is what you think you're eating and compared to what you are eating. And so like, oh, I
Gotcha.
think I'm eating about 2,000 calories a day. Oh, well, you're actually eating 2,400 calories a day, or
Mm.
And do you know the difference of, how much, an extra 400 calories a day over the course of 12 months will, where that's going to put you at the end of a year, right?
Yeah.
Right. Depending
Times
on
5 years, et
yeah,
cetera, right?
exactly. Just the laws of compounding calories. Let's just put it that way. So, um, yeah, you just have to know. And when you don't know, and it's okay not to know. Most people don't. Most people have never really been taught that. And if you're big food, you don't want people counting their calories. You don't want them reading the labels on the cereal box and all the other shit they're eating. Um, you don't want them to pay attention to that. You want them to feel good and hey, that's okay. Um, it's really the same. It's the same thing with money, right? It's just uh, you know how much what your salary is every year. I mean, everybody really knows honestly about how much money they're making, and
Right.
what they're going to make, but we're just not very good at projecting our spend. So along those lines,
Well, I got a quote that says, I will have tomorrow what others don't because I will do today what others won't. You know,
exactly.
there's got to be a price. It's not a big price, but it is a price.
Well, you talked about having an app, and here's I'm sure somebody is doing this. I haven't seen it, but what I think, and maybe in the era of AI, this would be a great tool to have. But if you had like directly tied to your bank account, and I think some banks do a pretty good job of this, but you could actually do a breakdown of your spend every month.
Yep.
And then based on like hey, here's your mortgage rate, here's the interest rate on your credit card or cards, or the interest rate on your auto loan, all those little things. If every month you could see, here's what you earned, here's went out in like what you're spent on taxes,
Right.
and then here was your spend every month on interest. This is what you're spending on money that you have borrowed. I mean, don't you think that would change people's perspective if they see like,
Yeah. I just met with
oh
a Purdue
shit.
student that they're in the process of launching a financial wellness, like financial literacy app. So I'm super encouraged that the next generation is thinking about stuff like that. Yeah, I think that would be great. I think, you know, like when I go to the VA to get my physical, they just break it down where your sodium is, where your sugar is, and all that stuff, your
Yeah.
blood pressure. And so anytime that you see a report that kind of breaks it down, and it's like, okay, everything's good here, weight's good here. Last time you were in here, your cholesterol was 176, now it's 198, and you're on the borderline. If I can if I can just look at one or two things and go, okay, I can focus on one or two things to get better, um, it just makes it easier. So little stuff like that. With our plan, we kind of do that like on a holistic approach, like on where your monthly budget goes to, and we show it in a little pie, but we don't break it down. It's not real time on a day-to-day basis, right? But that's kind of one of the trends too that we break down for folks just to kind of see where their money is going. And my catchphrase is I help people tell their money where to go instead of ask it where it went.
Hmm. So yeah, so I also run a program called The Blood Doesn't Lie, and that's really we call it the famous police panel, but we look at 7 lines of data
Ooh,
in your labs that
maybe we
that
need
can
we
give
need to
you.
trade
Yeah.
services.
Yeah, well, we can
You
definitely
give
get you
me some
hooked up.
locker room talk, and I'll give you some locker room talk.
Yeah, so this will so what we can tell people is what your 10-year cardiometabolic risk is, and really where you're headed. So maybe
Okay.
we need to start a secondary program called The Ledger Doesn't Lie.
Ooh, ooh. See,
You better trademark
great,
that right now because
great minds. That's
somebody's
right.
gonna we'll have that in a series of offerings from the Coptimizer, not just
That's
physical
right.
health, but your
Coptimizer LLC. a division of, right?
Yeah, there we go. All right,
I mean, I'm
we're
just thankful
spitballing it.
for our meeting. I'm thankful for I didn't really know you when you were the chief of police, but just based on our conversations, I think that's why you were in that position for a long time. You got a lot of empathy for people. You're a forward thinking guy. You're just a fun person. You're a good person. You got a good heart. And I'm thankful to have you in my life. And I'm thankful for the relationship that we've begun to see if we can just make some dadgum difference with our lives while we're here for this flicker.
Right on.
And so, thank you for your service to our country and the community. And yeah, I'm just super grateful for every officer out there, every veteran. Um, and you have my utmost respect. I appreciate everything you do and the daily grind and the daily struggle, and anything that I can do to be of service in any way is what I'm here for.
Well, I really do appreciate that, and likewise. And I knew this was going to happen. We were already like
Yeah, I know.
well way over time, but
I
that's
wrapped it
okay.
for you.
That's okay. Let's so if somebody is and I assume you'll go anywhere. I mean, you're based in Indiana, but if somebody here in Indiana or other place is like, hey, uh, I want to bring
Yeah, the chief of police in Houston. Okay. We have a conversation, but I have resources in Houston. Um, one of the things that I've been playing around with is doing like virtual. Like, is it almost easier now to do something virtual than it is face to face? If we can't herd the cats during work hours or anything like that, can we get them on a thing? Can we record it? How can we just best? So that's the kind of where I would work with the individual organizations just to figure out and get their feedback. And your feedback, honestly, is just a friend and somebody that understands that world is my job is to serve. I bring the content, I bring the enthusiasm, I bring that good stuff, but I don't know your world. I have trends, I have a little bit of experience, but I don't know your world. What is the best way to deliver this? Maybe the answer is just to ask the people you're trying to deliver it to. But yeah, if anybody wants to reach me, and they want, first of all, the free resources, just go to the realhowmoneyworks.com. You can download a free ebook. We've distributed like 30 million of these things, I think, over the last 40 some years. But there's a free book called How Money Works. And we even have one called How Money Works for Kids, which is a parent's guide to teaching kids about money. And then if they want to actually connect with me, they can find me on LinkedIn as Jim Vitou. I'm sure you'll have the graphic up. And my actual just landing page where you can book me at any time is www.meetwithjim.today. Meetwithjim.today. But yeah, I'd love to connect with anybody and have a conversation and see where it goes.
Awesome. I appreciate it. So, for those that are listening, here's what I do know. A lot of municipalities, a lot of organizations do have access to these types of resources inside of their agencies, but they're no good if they don't if they're not utilized, or they're underutilized, or they're not fully understood. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what we're looking to do here. I'm a big advocate of, in policing, we do this train the trainer model a lot of times, where because it's financially, it makes sense to do it. Like, we send someone out that's got an interest in a certain area or topic, and then they become a trainer, and they come back, and then they train everybody else. Um, I'm not going to tell people not to do that, because it can be an effective way to train, and it can be, again, fiscally, it can be what on the surface, at least it appears to be a smart way to do things. But here's where I also caution people on that type of model is, every time you send, if someone doesn't have the right passion, or quite frankly, the right capacity to really learn and understand a subject, then what they're going to teach is a watered down version of what they got. And every time that extends out, it gets watered down a little bit more, a little bit more. I like to go, honestly, the Coptimizer was really founded on this principle, where I started a program back in 2015 inside of our organization where I sent uh, guys on training they went to a real gunfighter, and not just cop trainers, but actual guys that have done this and been in, trained and fought in real world gun battles. Like,
Mm,
have them teach you. It's not that our guys can't teach well also, but you're always going to get something additionally from those that have been there and done that. Same thing with ground fighting and judo and jujitsu. Someone that fought in the octagon. you know that's the person you need. I'm not saying you have to train with them all the time, but some of the time is a good thing. And that's where I think people like you and resources that you have can be very critical, because we can get people to you, and then they begin to develop a better understanding of what the other resources that they have that they can put to use. So it becomes people like you become a force multiplier. So don't for those that are listening, whether you're an organizational leader or an individual, don't be afraid to reach out to experts, because people like Jim, and they want to help you. They're here to help you. Let them help you. And what's that, Jerry Maguire? Help me
yeah.
help you.
Help me. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
so
mean,
there we are,
I could
man.
write I could write a book about the things that I don't know, but I do know a few things that I've figured out, and I'm here to be of service. So if the timing is right, let's have a conversation. And if it doesn't make sense, it doesn't make sense. But let's open the dialogue. So appreciate you, Patrick.
Awesome. Thanks for being here today. Appreciate everything that you're doing for us, and everything that you're doing for the first responder community. You're sharing your valuable knowledge, and for spending some of your valuable time with us here today. So until
Yes,
the next
brother.
time, everyone, we'll be
Ciao.
1042.